So with the PlayStation 5 coming out in a few weeks, I thought it'd be great to go back and have a look at the generation of PlayStation consoles and see what the graphics were like from PlayStation 1 all the way up to the new PlayStation 5. And to do that, I think it'd be best if we looked at one particular game and then we can see how the style has changed over the years. And to do that, we're going to look at the Spider-Man franchise. So let's jump right into the video. Let's start off with the PlayStation 1 and we'll go all the way up to the PlayStation 5 graphics. Let's have a look. First up, the PS1, 33.1 MHz, 2 MB RAM, 1 MB for VIA memory. And instantly you can see here, I'm going to pause my video, that the characters, very low poly, textures, very low resolution. But you know, this was running on a machine that is now 20 years old. This game was released in 2000. Despite having all its limitations on the hardware, it was still doing an amazing job. This is still running in 3D and it's still amazing to be playing as Spider-Man. It brings back so many great memories. But these characters here probably would have had a poly limit of probably about 100 or 150 polys. And I think the most noticeable thing with the game is that there's no ground. So when you're zip-lining along on your web shooters, let's try and pause it here, you can see that there's no ground. Which is probably the most noticeable, and also it's got a really shallow kind of draw distance, so it's not having to worry about creating graphics far away in the background, and it's using fog quite extensively to kind of mask a lot of those missing details. But despite that, it's still doing an incredible job. I remember playing this game and the combat system at the time was amazing. It was great just being able to play as Spider-Man. And the console itself, you know, it was incredible despite its limitations. But one thing here, I imagine the developers were quite pleased about this chap's head and his haircut being able to have a flat head. But on this console, on the first generation, you can see here that there's no reflections. It's very simple, just diffuse materials and very simple, very blocky models, which, you know, at the time was amazing. And it just goes to show you, as you'll see in the upcoming clips, just how far things have come. But despite all its limitations, the PS1 was a real game changer in the console industry, I feel. So next up, the PS2 ran at 300 MHz, had 4 MB of DRAM, and as you can see here, I'm going to pause it again on a better clip, but instantly you can see how far it's come. And you will notice we now actually have a ground and detailed buildings that start to pop in the distance. With that extra power and the hardware, are able to do so much more. You've even got traffic driving around the roads. And this game, I know this isn't a game necessarily, this isn't a review about Spider-Man as such, but this game I think really set the precedent moving forward. It was kind of the cornerstone for how the games would work in the future. So the jump from PS1 to the PS2 version was incredible. And you know, it still got its limitations. The characters are still quite blocky and there's no like facial features and movement. But the animation was a whole lot better. They were really making use of the PS2 CPU, which I think was called the Emotion Engine. And you can see they're really making the most out of the hardware on this one. And as you can see here in the distance, you've got all the buildings. They were just able to get so many more models drawn on the screen using the PS2 hardware. Next up, Spider-Man on the PS3. PS3 had a 3.2 GHz processor, had 256 meg of XDR RAM, and 256 MB of GDDR3 for its video memory. I believe it had an NVIDIA RSX GPU. I think they call it like the reality synthesizer. They always had these really cool names. But instantly you can see that the graphics on the PS3 were taken to another level. Spider-Man looks great. You can see there's so much more mesh detail in there. And I'm going to pause it if I can. And you've got some really nice material properties on the main character. You've got some nice highlights there, some glossiness and the feeling of roughness. So almost the beginning of some PBR materials going on. Notice they're able to draw more models on the screen. You've got detail in the buildings now, and also some reflections in the windows and the glass. So everything's starting to become a lot more realistic. There's more detail in the meshes, and the lighting was really good as well. And this map looks strangely familiar to the PS4 version, but as you can see, it looks like you've got Captain America's shield on the map. And with the extra processing power of the PS3, you can see they're able to get more characters on the screen, and that really enhanced the combat features, as well as being able to use objects in your environment, so the physics really played a strong part of the PS3 version. Texture resolution is also increased as we go generation by generation, and as you can see here, the lighting is looking really nice. You've got some nice baked lighting here with quite a lot of detail with this wire mesh. And this shot looks great. I mean, this even has the effect of almost some volumetric lighting. The characters are a lot more animated and feel a lot more natural. And the guy's mouth actually moves, which is great. So Spider-Man on the PS3, or any games on the PS3, especially at the end of the console life cycle, looked stunning. Even on that hardware, you can see that they've got some really nice lighting effects in here. The draw distance that they're able to achieve was amazing. There's so much more detail in the textures and the introduction of kind of glossiness and reflections. Everything started to really now feel a lot more realistic. So next up, the most recent iteration of Spider-Man on the PS4, which is running on an 8-core AMD Jaguar processor. The original PS4 is 1.6 gigahertz, and I think the PS4 Pro was something like 2.13 gigahertz. But instantly, as you can see in this shot, just amazing. Everything looks so much more realistic. The quality of the textures is amazing, and you've got reflections in the glass, and especially that's most noticeable in this building in front of you. And as Spider-Man moves through the scene, you can just see that it looks stunning. There's just more. It's like everything's ramped up to 11. It's just very noticeable as you move through the generations how much more detail they're able to add to these games. More models, better quality textures, anti-aliasing, so things become much sharper. And the lighting for Spider-Man on the PS4 was absolutely amazing. So the PS4 had 8GB of GDDR5 RAM and a Radeon-based GPU with 1.84 teraflops, I think it was. And with all this going on in the scene, I think they're really like maxing that out. This game looked amazing, really making the most of the PS4's hardware. So next up, our last Spider-Man game, and a new and upcoming game for the PlayStation 5 will be this release from Insomniac Games. Now, the PlayStation 5 boasts some impressive stats, so we should be able to see some pretty incredible graphics coming up in the near future. Really excited for this new generation of games. And as you can see here, we are ramping up everything. Everything has been dialed up to maximum for the graphics on this console. And I'm going to have to read what the stats are for this because I'm not really too familiar with it yet. But the PlayStation 5, let's have a look, has 8 times Zen 2 cores at 3.5 gigahertz. Its GPU is 10.28 teraflops, running at 2.23 gigahertz, and it has 16 gigabyte of GDDR6 RAM. And for the first time in PlayStation console history, it's actually going to be using ray tracing. So all the lighting and reflections will look super realistic. And we can probably see that as we walk down the street here. So if you look on the floor, it's probably using ray traced shadows, ray traced ambient occlusion, ray traced reflections, and you can see that there with the street lights glinting off of the water on the ground. And this game just looks stunning. Even like if you notice like the fluff on his hood, just with the pure power that the PlayStation 5 has, able to just have so much more detail in your games. There's so many more characters on the screen. They all look like different characters. I can't see any repetition in there. You might do when you play the full game, like as you're running down the street to see characters that are using the same mesh and texture. But otherwise, the game looks stunning. I mean, the lighting looks incredible. You've got the particle system going on there in the background, and then you saw more particles when Spider-Man got kicked in the face. So this game just kind of levels everything up. I don't think for this particular generation that draw distance is going to be too much of a problem. I think some things have probably become a non-issue. I mean, you can see some trees in the background there, and they all look great. But what you might have noticed from what we've seen so far is that from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2, there was a huge gap in visual quality. I mean, you saw a difference, a huge difference from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2. And as I think generations go on and on, you're going to start to get like diminishing returns on graphics, because it's going to get to a point where it's just going to get so hard to improve on what's being done. I mean, how good can it get? I mean, it's going to be film quality, and is the PlayStation 5 that like that yet? Maybe not, but it's pretty damn close, and eventually the consoles will just get to a point where it's just going to be hard to see any improvement at all. It's going to be incredible to see how, because this is a game that's going to be available on release. Imagine the games that are going to be at the end of the console's life cycle, just how good they're going to be. And there is an Unreal demo showcasing like a woman running through an ancient kind of landscape, and that looked amazing as well. So just looking forward to the future and just seeing how good the graphics are going to get. How crazy are how many models they're going to be able to draw on screen, and just where everything's going to go. So we've taken a look at graphics across the PlayStation 1, PS2, PS3, PS4 and PS5, and we've seen just how much those graphics have evolved. So there we are, that's the full life cycle of PlayStation today, and it really shows you just how far things have come in terms of graphics. We've seen Spiderman 1 on all its blocky gloriness. Still an amazing game for the time, but then now 20 years have gone by, you can really see just how far we've come. And it's going to be exciting to see in the future, particularly the games at the end of the life cycle of the PS5, just how real they've got. And is too real a good thing? I don't know. Like I said for the PlayStation 5 version of Spider-Man, it's going to